Hey, happy Thursday. So far we have factored out our trinomials that had, only adding, so something like x plus 5 and x plus 11, or when we were only subtracting, so our two binomials might be, you know, w minus 2 and w minus 6. Stuff like that, where the signs are the same. I just have x plus something, or I just have x minus something. Next week we're going to mix it up a little bit more, but for this week I just want to study these two situations. And we're going to look at how do I tell the difference between these two? How do I know which one am I looking at? Well, what we noticed yesterday was, a positive number times a positive number. So positive 5 times a positive 11. So positive 5 times positive 11 gets me a positive number of 55. And a negative times a negative, so negative 2 times negative 6, a negative times a negative also gets me a positive. So these last numbers, these constants, are always going to be positive if I have the same thing going on in both terms. If this binomial is subtraction, then so is that one. Or here I have just addition. So these last numbers, these constants, are always going to be positive if I have that case, which I do this week. Then what we're going to look at is this middle case, this middle number, or this middle sign. We're going to say, is that middle term positive or negative? And that's what's going to tell me if both of my binomials will be adding or subtracting for this week. So let's try a few. Again, we're looking at just this middle term for today. So let me just make a note of that middle term. So I'm going to determine in here, I've got a negative, so here I'm going to be x minus something else. In B, I've got subtraction, or a negative number in the middle there, so it'll be x minus something else. C, I've got a positive 9x, so I'm adding 9x, so I'll take x plus something and x plus something. Same thing for D. I've got this positive sign, that plus sign in the middle. So this would be x plus something and x plus something else. Here in E, I've got a negative, so this is going to be x minus and x minus something else. And last but not least, I have a plus in the middle, so that'll be x plus something and x plus some other number. So let's determine here what we're looking at. 1 through 4, let's do these. So positive in the middle, so both my binomials are going to be positive. Here I've got a negative in the middle, so both are going to be negative. And the last one, what's the last one going to be? I've got a positive in there, so that's going to be both positive. And again, the reason why we can make this claim for this week is because this last number is positive. So don't worry about that yet, but on Monday we'll talk more about that. So now what we're doing again is we're still going to take this last term and we're going to break it down into its factors. So we make our base of t. We try not to cover up the numbers. 2 and 28. 3 doesn't go in. 4 and 14. 6, 7, and 8. And then I'm trying to find which pair adds to a positive 15. So 1 and 56 is 57. 2 and 28 is 30. 4 and 14 is 18. 7 and 8 is 15. So this is the one I want. And we know that they're both positive because I have a positive last number and a positive middle number. So that would be x plus 7 and x plus 8. Number 2, I've got both negative, and the reason why again is I have a positive last number and a negative middle number. So a negative times a negative is going to get me a positive 20. And let's see what two terms multiply to 20. Well, I got 1 and 20, 2 and 10, let's see, 4 and 5, and then out of these pairs, I want to know which pair combines to a negative 9x. So these have got to combine to a negative 9x. So negative 1 and negative 20 would get me negative 21. And if I tried to switch this around, if I had a positive 1 and a negative 20, that wouldn't work. That would be a negative 19. Or 20 minus 1 would be positive 19. Excuse me. So those wouldn't work. 2 and 10, I could either get a negative 12, if they're both negative. If I made the 10 positive, it would be a positive 8. If I made the 2 positive, it would be a negative 8. Or I could get a positive 12, so that's not going to work. But a negative 4 and a negative 5 is going to get me a negative 9. And the reason we knew these were both negative is because a negative 4 times a negative 5 is a positive 20. So negative times a negative is a positive. That's our last term. And our middle term, a negative 4 plus a negative 5. So if I owe you $4 and then I owe you $5 more, so I'm adding on to my debt, that would get me a negative 9, which is what I want for that middle term. So our final answer is going to be our two binomials, and we'll just plug in those numbers of negative 4 and negative 5. So let's try these last two together. We'll make our t-chart. Nope, that's the color I want. So we'll make our t-chart. Again, really trying hard not to cover up those numbers. And here I've got a positive last number and a negative middle number, so I'll have both negative. Let's see what two numbers multiply to get 16. Well, 1 and 16, 2 and 8, 4 and 4. So what pair is going to subtract to a negative 10? Well, if I make all these negative, just to try it out, I get negative 17, negative 10, and negative 8. And I wanted them to add to negative 10, so this middle pair, negative 2 and negative 8, is what I'm going to look at. So my final answer, put my two binomials, and then I'll plug in those numbers of negative 2 and negative 8. And our very, very last problem. Again, I want them to multiply to positive 8. So numbers that multiply to positive 8 are 1 and 8, 2 and 4, and that's it. And I want them to add or combine to a positive 9x. So again, don't forget to keep that sign with that middle term. So what pair here is going to add to a positive 9? Well, this first pair, 1 and 8, if they're both positive, so positive 1 plus 8 gets me 9. So this is the pair I'm going to choose. And I'll write my final answer. Get my two binomials ready. And I'll drop in these two numbers, these factors of 8 that were positive 1 and positive 8. And that's going to be my final answer. So if you guys want, you can take a minute and solve these two, decide if they're both positive or both negative. Again, check out that middle term to help you out, and I'll put the answers down here in a second. So you can pause the video, try these out, and here are the answers. So I hope you guys have a fantastic day. You know, weather's not great, but try to make the most of it, and we'll